Well, what if I told you that I screwed up? I messed up, guys. I had the tiebreaker video that came out on the channel. I did it in the live show. I was incorrect, and it probably made BYU fans a little bit nervous. There's actually a different fan base that should be a little more nervous based on how the tiebreaker actually breaks down. So let me issue an apology. I'm sorry for mixing that up. And I need to specifically apologize to Rise and Shout, who sent me a chat while this was going on during the live stream with the exact language that I wound up misinterpreting, and I shot him down. So I was wrong there. Rise and Shout, thank you for doing that. And accept my apologies, please, for trampling all over you there. So that is my bad. So here's the deal. Most of what I had is correct. I just misinterpreted after the initial tiebreaker what happens. So the deal is, I got asked, what happens if BYU, K-State, and Iowa State are all tied at 8-1 in the Big 12 at the end of the regular season? So to have that happen, BYU's dropping a game somewhere. K-State is winning out, which includes winning in Ames at Iowa State, and that's the only game that the Cyclones lose. So if that were the case, well, we've got to break a three-way tie. First tiebreaker, if you're going down the list in multi-team ties in the Big 12, is did one team beat the other two? We do not have that here. BYU and Iowa State didn't play. So then we move on to, you take the records of the three teams compared based on winning percentage against common conference opponents. Between these three, there were only two common conference opponents. Crazy, but true. That's Houston and Kansas. So as long as none of the losses there to Houston or Kansas, which as long as BYU does not lose to Houston or Kansas, then we move on to the next step. That would be the record of the teams against the next highest placed common opponent in the standings. So the highest common opponent in the standings below the group that is tied. That again would be either Houston or Kansas. So again, assuming BYU does not pick up a loss there, then it would be the same answer. Either Houston or Kansas, everybody would have the same record. So then you get to the record of the opponents that you have played in Big 12 play. You take the winning percentage in conference play of your conference opponents and compare that to everybody else. All right, you following me? K-State's schedule, who they played in Big 12 play, you add up their win-loss record in conference play. Do the same for Iowa State and BYU. All of this I had correct up to this point. K-State 53%, Iowa State 44%, BYU 32%. So K-State wins the tiebreaker. Now, where I got this wrong is I took that and said, okay, K-State and Iowa State are the top two, so they advance to the Big 12 championship game. That's actually not correct. So K-State wins the three-way tiebreaker with the 53% opponent conference winning percentage. And K-State's got a pretty sizable lead there. I think it's doubtful that that would change, but it certainly could. But K-State's in a good position there. So then K-State is taken away from this three-way tiebreaker. They're in the championship game as the number one seed in this scenario. But then you have BYU and Iowa State still tied for the second spot. And now you go back through all the steps for just those two. And that's where I made my mistake. And that's where Shorts All Year correctly pointed that language out to me. And many of you guys in the comments of the video pointed that out to me. So I appreciate everybody who did that. So K-State's in there as the one. Now we come back around to Iowa State versus BYU. Neither of them beat each other. So we're on to tiebreaker number 2. Win percentage against all common conference opponents. Okay, so they now have a lot more common opponents. K-State, Houston, Baylor, UCF, Kansas, and Utah. That sets up a scenario here, but they're both good scenarios for BYU. If BYU's one loss is to Arizona State, it would not be one of those common opponents, and they'd be 6-0 against the common opponents, and Iowa State would be 5-1 because they lost to K-State. So then BYU advances on by virtue of that. They are in the Big 12 championship game. But if the loss is to somebody other than Arizona State, if it is to, say, Utah, then both teams are 5-1, so they're tied. So we move on to the next tiebreaker. The next tiebreaker is your record against the next highest placed common opponent in the standings. Well, that now becomes K-State because K-State is a common opponent for these two. So what is your record against K-State? Well, BYU is 1-0. Iowa State is 0-1. So either way here, when you bring it back around, BYU wins that tiebreaker with Iowa State. and it would be K-State and BYU in the Big 12 championship game. So actually, it's Iowa State that would be in some trouble here if they lose to K-State. That game in Ames is just massive for K-State and Iowa State. If K-State loses, I mean, there's just really no, Iowa State would have to lose 3 times between now and then to make that matter for K-State if they're going to lose that game. It just, in Iowa State, as you see here, if they lose, they're going to be in a lot of tiebreaker trouble with K-State, BYU, potentially Colorado as well. So that's a huge, huge game. A Farmageddon rematch in Arlington, as I told you last time, seems likely. No, it actually does not seem very likely here. And it seems like a rematch of K-State BYU would be a much more likely scenario. BYU is in a better position than I led you to believe last time. And I apologize. These are definitely really convoluted. It's a lot to read through. And I will tell you, I reached out to the Big 12. I know others have as well. We have not gotten any official confirmation from the league on if we are interpreting this totally correctly. So I guess take it with a bit of a grain of salt based on that. But the language that is there does say once you have somebody decided in the 3-way tiebreak, you pull them out and then you go back through for the other 2 remaining teams. That is pretty clearly in the language of the tiebreaker there. So I got it wrong. Sincerely apologize. Probably rushed it a little bit to get it on the air for you guys for that. So have at it in the comments. Let me know. Torch me. Tear me up. That is totally fine. I will just say, as a K-State guy, like the thought of a Farmageddon rematch, having to go beat Iowa State in Ames and then turn around and beat them again on a neutral field, I did not like that idea at all. And it has nothing to do with whether or not I think they're a better team than BYU, and everything to do with playing a team twice in a row and having to beat them twice in a row, especially one that, you know, Matt Campbell has gotten the better of Chris Kleiman generally in the matchup between the 2 of them. That's not something I was looking forward to. So anyway, there's your update. I'm going to have an update coming out in my Open for Business newsletter about that as well. So thank you guys for bearing with me. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you everybody who got in the comments and alerted me to this. I'll keep you updated. I mean, things could change. This is coming out on Saturday morning, right? Things could change literally today, and the tiebreaker scenarios are totally different, and we'll just keep monitoring it, man. That's all we can do. So thank you for being here. Thank you so much for supporting the channel as always. Speaking of, I mentioned the Open for Business newsletter. If you want your Big 12 news without SEC or Big 10 bias, you want stuff like this just filtered straight to your inbox multiple times a week for free, go to ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com to get subscribed, or click the link that's in the description of this video. Multiple ways that you can do that. So thank you so much. Once again, all of you are amazing. Like the video, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you would like to contribute to the channel there. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon.